This is Congresswoman Virginia Foxx with a congressional update. I'm very happy today to have with me Pete Sepp from the National Taxpayers Union. Pete, thanks for taking some time to do this show with me. We have people who watch the show every week all across the 5th District, 12 counties in the 5th District, and I'm very pleased that you were able to come. This is a very timely topic for us.
Yes.
It's captured the attention of the nation. I'm certainly getting a lot of telephone calls and letters and emails about the issue of what to do with our economy, what to do with the so-called stimulus plan. Some of us call it a borrow and spend plan, but pardon me, I'd like to get some of your opinion about that and see if we can shed some light on the issues of taxation particularly. But talk just briefly about the National Taxpayers Union.
We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan citizen group celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. We work for lower taxes, smaller government, more accountability from public officials at all levels. We have over 9,000 members in North Carolina, 362,000 nationwide, and we are proud to have awarded you our Taxpayers Friend Award twice so far.
Well,
and
thank you very much.
I'm
proud of that.
We'll be doing it again.
I'm proud of that too. Well, I came to Washington telling people we have too much government. I ran for the state senate on that same issue, and the way that we can slow down the government, and particularly the rate of growth in the government, is by cutting off the fuel for the government, which of course are the taxes that we pay. Now, we do have a major situation, economic situation that we're facing, and there are different ideas about how to deal with that. Tell me what NTU thinks that the federal government should do to get our economy back on track.
Well, I'd rather start, I think, with what the government shouldn't do, and that's spend a lot of money. Just throw money at the problem, see what sticks to the wall, and hope that we come out of it okay. That solution is non-solution. It's just not a solution. It's not going to work. And the problem is there's this notion that everybody believes spending more will somehow get the economy back on its feet. That is not true. There is not a consensus among economists that spending more money stimulates an economy. In fact, the Congressional Budget Office studied this question in depth 10 years ago. They concluded, after looking at 15 separate pieces of research, the effects on the economy of larger government spending are minimal and often negative. It can actually slow an economy down because obviously when you think about it, the money has to come from somewhere when the government spends it. That means higher taxes or higher taxes on a future generation through borrowing. Simple as that.
And I don't think a lot of people think about that, frankly. I think people think the money that the federal government has comes like manna from heaven, and it isn't that way. And I think one of the benefits that has accrued to us in this debate that we've been having, again, over a stimulus package, what's called a stimulus package, is to have people understand just what you said. And then, of course, to add to that, when the government is taxed all it feels like it can tax currently, it's borrowing a lot of that money from other countries, which again has to be paid back later. And after I came back from the first bailout vote, or came home from the first bailout vote, came back for the second bailout vote, my grandchildren, who are 12 and 9, wanted to know what was going on in Washington. And I said to them, you know, the Congress just put you, your children, and your grandchildren, which is 3 generations, into a great deal of debt for a long, long time. And my granddaughter said, Grandma, why do you want to put little children into debt? And I said, I don't want to do that, but I think we have to help the American public understand that's basically what we've done. Now, you've looked at the stimulus packages. They're changing minute by minute, and we know that. But we had a big one in the House. The Senate is working on one. Are there parts of those packages that NTU could support?
I think that the direction they're taking toward making more business tax reductions is a good trend. Things like immediate expensing for items, things like expanding the so-called Section 179 deduction. Sounds complicated, but basically the provisions that they're considering would allow businesses to take tax write-offs for activities and investments they would engage in right away rather than having to do it over a number of years. That's an incentive for people to start taking risks again. So that's one item. I think some of the infrastructure spending might be worth the money in terms of relieving traffic congestion, but there again, they're pouring a lot of it into things like mass transit, which still carry about 2% of all commuter trips in this country. It is not a cost-effective way of spending money.
And my understanding, again, from the Congressional Budget Office, which is nonpartisan and should be giving us objective information, is that only 7% of the money will be spent in 2009. And yet we keep hearing over and over and over that we need this immediately. And with only 7% of $1 trillion being spent this year, it doesn't appear as though that's going to be much of a jump start to the economy. I share the same feeling that you do, and I think most economists do, is that cutting taxes for businesses is the way to go. I think in many cases businesses and corporations have been demonized in this country as evil entities. But again, I don't think people understand that's where the value is. If people aren't willing to take risk, whether they're individual entrepreneurs or they're small businesses or they're large corporations, they have to invest capital to create wealth.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to do that takes risk. And there has to be some idea that you're not going to be punished for taking those risks, but rather rewarded if the risk pays off. As it is now, there seems to be more of an attitude of punishment rather than reward. Is that your feeling?
Absolutely, and it's important for folks to remember roughly 9 out of 10 people who are employed in this country work at firms with 50 or fewer employees. So when you hear rhetoric on Capitol Hill from other lawmakers saying we've got to go after the corporations, that's almost certainly one of the places your audience works for, and it's not necessarily some giant factory. It could be a repair shop, could be a small retail outlet. They're the ones who are going to have to bear the burden of these punitive policies, and that means the employees will too, in the form of lower wages, less benefits, maybe fewer advancement opportunities.
Yes. Most people, and my husband and I were in business for several years before we became a corporation, but we were advised by a lawyer, become a corporation because you have to protect your personal assets from your business assets. You could have a catastrophe in your business, and if you don't become a corporation, you could lose everything that you have personally. So corporations are formed not to avoid paying taxes and not for some nefarious reason, but simply to protect the personal assets of the individuals. And again, I don't think most people understand that, and that's unfortunate, but that's the direction in which we've gone. Now, my hope is as we continue down this road with trying to do something, because the government often thinks it has to do something as opposed to letting things go, is that sometimes government creates more harm rather than letting the marketplace play out. Any comments you have on that?
Absolutely. Part of the problem here is almost an arrogance on the part of some people in Washington who think that pulling a few strings here and there will somehow correct everything and restore balance to the economy. Economies turn down because there are fundamental problems of supply and demand. Right now, it's housing. We've got to figure out a way for the housing market to reset itself. And the federal government taking over Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, holding all these mortgages, that's not the way to do it. I think probably the worst money manager in the country today is not some broker, it's the federal government itself.
Well, we certainly agree with that. And in many ways, it was the federal government that caused the problem with housing, because it pushed Fannie and Freddie and other banks to make risky loans to people that could not pay them back. And when that started going sour, and then last year when the gas prices started going up, then that compounded the problem. So I think we had two situations, both created in many ways by the policies of liberals in the federal government, and again, who think that they can pull the strings and change the fundamental laws of economics.
And
that can't be done.
Can't be done.
We've had arrogant people do that before, and I think that is right. We have to be reminded. We had our prayer breakfast this week. It's called the National Prayer Breakfast, but it's an international prayer breakfast, and we certainly were reminded by everybody who spoke and all the prayers that were given there that we're not in charge. There's a higher power, and there are also higher laws like economics laws, which the federal government can't transcend. And I think that's important for us to be reminded of and to remind the public of. Our founders thought of the federal government as being there only for the national security of this country, and I talk about that all the time. Now we have just about a minute left. Is there anything else you'd like to say about the National Taxpayers Union or about our current situation in the short period of time that we have?
Well, just to offer some quick praise for your attempt to stop the second half of that bailout for the financial industry from going through. Wish it succeeded, but we are now having some impact on the progress of the stimulus. People are starting to take a second look. They're realizing that perpetually mismanaged agencies like NASA and Homeland Security are getting tons of money in this that they won't be able to spend. They're realizing that pork barrel projects are creeping in there. They're realizing that they will not benefit very much at all from the package. And so our message is get involved, get active, call Washington, because it's having an impact. And if folks want to join us or get more involved, visit us at ntu.org. There's lots of things that they can do. Great.
Thanks, Pete. This is Congresswoman Virginia Foxx. I'm pleased Pete Sepp with NTU has been with me today with another congressional update.